You wouldn't have noticed him if you passed him on the street. That was the point. A man in a plain coat, walking calmly through Moscow, carrying secrets powerful enough to shatter governments, and no one stopped him. Before I tell you how that walk even became possible, let me pause you for a second. Stories like this were never meant to leave the shadows. If you want more truths that almost disappeared, take a moment to subscribe. It quietly helps keep these stories alive. All right. Stay with me. Imagine the weight of that moment. Every step he took echoed with risk. Moscow wasn't just a city, it was a net. Cameras, informants, watchful eyes trained to spot hesitation, fear, or mistakes. And yet, he walked as if he belonged there. You need to understand what made this dangerous. This wasn't a spy sneaking into the Soviet system. This was someone trying to walk out of it, carrying information that could expose operations, names, methods, and betrayals buried deep inside one of the most paranoid states in history. At that time, no one simply left Moscow with secrets. Not diplomats, not insiders, not spies. People vanished for less. As he moved through the city, everything around him became a test. The way he crossed the street, how long he paused at a corner, whether his eyes lingered too long on a reflection in a shop window. You would have felt it too, that tightening in your chest, the awareness that one wrong glance could end everything. And the most unsettling part? He wasn't being chased. Not yet. Because the most dangerous moment in espionage isn't when alarms sound. It's when everything seems normal. And somewhere behind him, unseen, Moscow was already deciding whether this man would ever leave alive. By the time you understand who he really was, it's already too late to turn back. He wasn't a reckless defector or a desperate man acting on impulse. He was trained to wait, to observe patterns, to trust routines more than people. For years, he had lived inside Moscow's rhythm, the same streets, the same buildings, the same faces that never asked questions but always remembered yours. And somewhere along the way, he learned something he was never supposed to learn. Names. Methods. Quiet agreements made in rooms without windows. Information that didn't just embarrass the system, it threatened it. Once he knew, there were only two futures available to him: disappear quietly, or walk away carrying everything. If you're still listening with me right now, let me tell you something personal, just for a moment. Someone close to me once said this channel wouldn't even reach 100 subscribers, that stories like this don't really matter anymore. If you choose to subscribe, it's a small way of proving that wrong, and it tells me you want to hear what happens next. Now, keep listening, because this is where the danger sharpened. He couldn't leave suddenly. That would raise alarms. He had to make his exit look boring, predictable, forgettable. That meant weeks of acting normal, while preparing to vanish forever. Every conversation became a performance, every routine a test. You'd feel it too, the exhaustion of pretending nothing had changed while everything had. He memorized exit routes not just out of buildings, but out of identities. He reduced his possessions until his life fit inside what could be explained. Anything emotional had to be cut loose. Friends, habits, familiar places, attachments were liabilities now. And the worst part? He had no idea if anyone already suspected him. In Moscow, suspicion doesn't announce itself. It watches, it waits, it lets you keep walking. So when the day finally came, the day he stepped outside, knowing he would never return, the city didn't react at all, which should have terrified you. Because silence, in a place like that, is never accidental. You might think the hardest part was stepping outside that day. It wasn't. The real danger began once he realized how carefully the city was letting him move. Moscow had a way of doing that, giving you just enough freedom to convince you everything was fine. He followed the same streets you would have chosen, the ones that felt ordinary, the ones that blended him into the crowd. Trams rattled past, shoes scraped against pavement. Life continued, indifferent to the fact that a man carrying state secrets was walking among it. But here's what you need to picture. Every public place doubled as a listening post. Every stranger could be trained. Every delay could be intentional. When he paused to light a cigarette, he wasn't relaxing, he was checking reflections. When he boarded public transport, he counted stops not by distance, but by risk. You would have done the same. He noticed the small things first. A man appearing twice in two different locations, a car idling a few seconds longer than necessary. Nothing dramatic, nothing provable. That's how surveillance works when it's confident. It doesn't rush you. It lets you doubt yourself. And doubt is dangerous. At one point, he deliberately changed direction. Nothing sudden. Just a quiet decision, a turn he didn't usually make. If he was being watched, this would flush it out. If not, no harm done. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, footsteps matched his pace. Not close, not far. Perfectly measured. Your pulse would have spiked right there. You'd tell yourself it meant nothing. That Moscow was crowded. That paranoia was expected. But training teaches you something uncomfortable. Coincidence has a very short lifespan. He didn't look back. Looking back confirms fear. Instead, he kept walking, knowing that if this shadow followed him much longer, the walk would end somewhere he would never be seen again. No arrest. No explanation. Just a door closing quietly behind him. And then, just as suddenly, the footsteps faded. No confrontation. No resolution. Which was worse, because now he didn't know whether the danger had passed, or if it had simply learned more about him. And when that happens, the city doesn't need to stop you. It just needs to remember where you're going. If you were expecting a dramatic escape, this part will unsettle you. There were no chases, no sirens, no last-second sprints through alleyways. Just time stretching thin while every second carried the same question. Has the decision already been made? The plan depended on boredom. On officials seeing nothing worth remembering. He dressed carefully, not to hide, but to blend. Nothing new, nothing old. The kind of clothing you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing it. Even his posture was rehearsed, relaxed enough to seem unimportant, controlled enough to avoid attention. You would have felt the tension in your jaw by now. Every checkpoint was a performance. Papers presented smoothly. Answers given without haste. Too fast looks rehearsed. Too slow looks guilty. He watched faces more than procedures. Procedures follow rules. Faces follow instinct. And instinct was what he feared most. One guard lingered longer than necessary. Not aggressive, just curious. The kind of curiosity that turns into a file later. You'd notice the pause immediately, that fraction of a second where nothing happens, but everything is decided. Then the papers were handed back. He didn't thank them. Gratitude invites memory. Beyond the checkpoint, the city began to thin. Buildings gave way to space. Space gave way to silence. The closer he came to leaving Moscow's reach, the heavier the air felt. You'd think relief would come first. It didn't. Relief comes only after survival is confirmed, and confirmation hadn't arrived yet. He knew one mistake could still unravel everything. A delayed message, a quiet phone call, a vehicle already moving. So he kept walking, not faster, not slower, exactly as planned, because the moment you act like you're escaping, you become someone worth stopping. And somewhere behind him, decisions were still being weighed, files still open, names still being discussed. The terrifying truth is this. He didn't know if he was free. He only knew that, for now, no one had decided to end him. And in Moscow, that was never permanent. By now, every step he took carried the weight of consequences heavier than any coat on his back. You would have felt it too, the knowledge that one misstep could erase everything. Not tomorrow, not in an hour, but instantly. Moscow didn't forgive mistakes. It didn't announce them. It just made them permanent. He moved carefully, following streets he had walked hundreds of times, but now viewed through a lens of suspicion. Each corner held potential witnesses. Each reflection in a window could reveal his presence. The city was quiet, almost patient. And that was the real danger. Patience is calculated, and Moscow was anything but innocent. He noticed patterns now, small things he hadn't considered before. A shadow that mimicked his pace, a tram that slowed as he approached, a window too reflective in the afternoon sun. You'd understand if you were there the subtle signals that someone knew, someone was watching, but hadn't yet acted. He slowed near a marketplace, blending among people. carrying nothing that could betray him. He counted his breaths, his heartbeats, the rhythm of his steps. Even a tiny misalignment would make him visible, memorable, disposable. By nightfall, he reached a narrow alley, leading to the outer districts, the point where the city's grip began to loosen. Here, the real challenge began. Crossing invisible lines without being noticed, Moscow could stop anyone in 1,000 ways. But the hardest part was staying unnoticed while holding the most dangerous secrets in human memory. And then, almost imperceptibly, he sensed it. A shadow that didn't belong. A presence that waited. Not close, not threatening, but precise, deliberate, calculated. You'd feel your stomach tighten the same way he did. Knowing instinct had never failed yet could do nothing here. He kept walking, not faster, not slower, just enough to remain invisible. Because in Moscow, survival wasn't about escaping the city. It was about convincing the city that you didn't matter. For now, he had succeeded. But the cost of each step was already written somewhere behind him. The city was taking notes, and it never forgot. He made it out. Somehow, against every rule, every expectation, every silent observer in the city, he walked free. You might think that's the end, but it isn't. Because in espionage, freedom is temporary, fragile, and measured in moments, not years. Once beyond Moscow's reach, he didn't celebrate. There was no relief, no exhale. Only the constant awareness that what he carried in his mind was still dangerous. Secrets don't retire just because you've left the city. They linger, waiting for careless hands or a misplaced word. You'd feel it too, that tension that never truly leaves. He changed locations, identities, routines. Every letter written, every meeting avoided, every glance over his shoulder was part of survival. And yet, even in safety, he knew the city had left a mark on him. Shadows of streets he walked, faces he memorized, the rhythm of footsteps in perfect sync with fear. Those memories became a second skin. No one ever confirmed who followed him. No files were leaked, no arrests were made. But some things were clear. Moscow remembered. It never forgets. And anyone who ever walks out with secrets like his carries that memory forever. If you're listening now, you're part of that remembrance. My mother once told me stories like this wouldn't reach even 100 people, that no one would care. But every listener proves something different. Subscribing keeps these stories alive. It's proof that secrets, though dangerous, deserve to be remembered. The spy walked out of Moscow, but Moscow never let him go. And that's the lesson for anyone who carries truths too dangerous to be spoken. Freedom is fleeting, and vigilance is eternal. Even decades later, if you were there, you'd feel the weight of each step, the silence that followed, and the knowledge that the city always watches, even when it appears empty.